the echoing bell, Daniel. It seemed like really good weather, so I decided to take a walk out in the woods as the evening shadows grew long. I walked a path that I seldom took. It was twisty, and the trees loomed tall and dark all around. Then, in the midst of the darkening woods, I suddenly heard a strange, eerie bell ringing in the distance. It was the strangest thing to hear bells in the middle of the woods. It wasn't like any sound I'd heard before. It was kind of like an old church bell mixed with a music box. It gave me goosebumps, and I shivered, feeling a little cold. But I was just so curious, and I followed that chime deeper into the woods. The trees closed in around me as I followed the sound. It was like they were leaning in closer to listen to that spooky melody. I tried to brush off that creepy feeling, thinking it was all in my head. To be honest, I was just mesmerized by the sound, and I kept walking and walking towards that strange sound until I stumbled into a small clearing. In the middle stood a huge, gnarled, ancient tree, its branches twisting like bony fingers as if reaching for the sky. Dangling from one of those twisted branches was an old, rusty bell, swaying gently in the breeze. So that was the bell that had called me here. It looked really cool and ancient, like this was some kind of pagan temple or something. I couldn't resist. I had to check out that bell. It looked ancient, covered in rust and moss. I didn't know why my hand trembled as I reached out and touched it, wondering how it could keep ringing, as there wasn't much wind. But the moment I touched it, the bell just stopped ringing. At that very moment, a sudden heavy silence fell over the clearing, and it felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. And then, I saw her, a figure lurking in the shadows at the edge of the clearing. My heart leaped into my throat as I tried to make out who it was. It was a tall, thin woman, dressed in raggedy, old-timey clothes. Her hair hung in long, tangled strands, hiding her face. She stood there like a statue, not moving a muscle, and her eyes were hidden in the darkness. "Who are you?" I stuttered, my voice quivering. No answer, just silence. I could feel her watching me, and a chill ran down my spine. I noticed that she had this gruesome mark on her left hand, and her nails were very long. Panic started to creep in, so I took a step back. Then she moved, gliding towards me with slow, purposeful steps. Her hair parted just enough for me to see her face, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Her eyes were empty, like there was nothing behind them, just darkness. I didn't waste a second. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, ignoring the thorns and scratches that tore at my skin. It felt like the forest was closing in on me, the trees twisting and turning, trying to keep me from getting away. The mournful toll of the bell echoed in my ears, getting louder and louder with every step I took. When I finally burst out of the woods and into the open, I could still hear that bell ringing behind me, haunting my every step. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my home, my heart pounding like a drum. For weeks after that, I couldn't shake the memory of that woman. Her empty eyes haunted my dreams, and the sound of the bell echoed in my head, even when I was wide awake. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, a trick my mind was playing on me because of the creepy woods and the weird bell. But then, one night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again, the faint, eerie ring of that bell, drifting in through my open window. I shot up, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound grew louder, pulling me towards the window like a moth to a flame. And there she was, in the moonlight, that woman from the woods, standing in my yard, staring right at me. The bell in her hand was still ringing, its mournful tone filling the night air. I slammed the window shut and locked it, my hands shaking. I could hear her footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, as she got closer to the house. The ringing of the bell got louder, and I knew she was coming for me. I didn't wait to find out what she wanted. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I drove away as fast as I could, and even as I left, I could still hear the haunting ring of that bell echoing in the distance. I never went back to those woods, and I never saw the woman or heard the bell again. But I still keep hearing the bell often wherever I am. The Antique Shoe Candace. I was heading home through the woods as the day was turning into night. The path was full of prickly bushes that scratched my arms along the way. The journey wasn't very comfortable, but I decided to try to use this shortcut to be home before dark. As I made my way through the prickly woods, I saw an old, broken-down house. It looked like nobody lived there for a long time. I got curious, so I went inside anyway despite wanting to go home early. There was dust everywhere, and it smelled like old stuff. Spider webs were hanging from everywhere, and the floor was making loud noises when I walked. I kept walking into the dark house, and it was like the house had been asleep for a very, very long time. I used the torch from my phone to see more clearly, and the battery was almost out. The walls had cracks, and the paint was peeling off. There were more cobwebs all over, like spooky curtains hanging from the ceiling. The wooden floor squeaked loudly under my steps, making the house seem like it was alive in a creepy way. I followed a creaky hallway, and it was so dark that it felt like I was walking through a long, spooky tunnel. The only light came from the holes in the walls where the outside world tried to peek in. I walked and walked till I got to a room. The door made a creepy creak when I opened it, and some faint light sneaked inside. I was surprised the handle still worked. Below was an old, little shoe just sitting on the floor. It seemed alone and like nobody cared about it anymore. It was definitely a kid's shoe, but it looked antique. Maybe I could sell it, who knows? The shoe looked beaten up, like it had been on a really weird adventure, and it was almost like it was telling stories about strange places it had visited. But there it was, in that spooky room, like it was expecting something to happen. I mean, it's just a shoe, right? When I grabbed that shoe, every strand of my hair just stood up. I felt a chill airbrush through my skin. I didn't think too much about it, but then I heard this faint laughter, like a kid giggling, but it didn't sound right. Maybe I was just imagining things at this point. I decided to follow that strange laugh, even though the only thing that I could hear now is my pumping heartbeat. What is this? Some sort of Halloween prank? Only one way to find out. It led me to a set of narrow, squeaky stairs that went down into darkness. I was a little scared, no doubt about it, but then I was just so curious. I needed to find out where that laugh was coming from. I kept walking. Each step I took down those stairs made a loud creaking sound. The laugh, meanwhile, kept getting louder and louder, and it felt like someone's eyes were glued to me, watching my every move. Finally, I reached the bottom of the stairs, and I arrived in a dim and spooky basement. Great, my phone had run out of battery by this time. I turned towards the corner of the basement, squinting, and I jumped. There was someone, a little girl, probably about 5 or 6 years old. She wore old, tattered clothes and had only one shoe on. She sat on the floor, quietly playing with a broken doll. What the hell is a random little kid doing in a random spooky basement of an abandoned house? Was she lost? I looked into her eyes, and I saw no ounce of emotion there, just pure emptiness. Maybe she's just homeless. I tried to talk to her, but she didn't say a word. She just kept giggling with that weird laugh. That kept sending me shivers. So I decided to get closer to her. As I got closer and closer, there was a very strong, unexplainable tension in the air. The air is almost choking, and that's when I noticed something strange. The missing shoe that I picked up earlier was actually on her right foot. I was baffled. I had picked up the shoe from upstairs, and it belonged to her right foot, not left, so how could it be on her foot? I took a look at my hands that were holding the shoes. My fingers were instead covered with worms. My eyes grew wider. The revolting sight made me so sick in the stomach. I shrieked in horror as I vigorously shook my fingers and wiped them against the wall to get rid of those worms. The child suddenly let out an ear-piercing scream. Before I could react, she lunged at me with incredible speed, faster than anything I had ever seen before. I let out a scream as I fell back and ran up the stairs, and she was right behind me, screaming ever so hauntedly. I kept running and running, hoping I was running out the right way. I got out of that house into the dark woods, panting, and kept running as long as my body could handle, and not looking back till I got back home. What had just happened? My legs gave away as I fell on my bed, staring at the ceiling. My heart was still racing so hard, unable to grasp what had just happened. I couldn't get over that lost shoe, the worms, or the spooky laugh of that little girl. I don't know what I found in that old house, but I know one thing: I'm never taking that shortcut in the woods again. If you found any enjoyment in the video, I implore you to click that like button and subscribe if you dare.